the quiet village nestled among rolling hills, Meenakshi, a widowed mother of two, worked tirelessly to support her family. Her days were filled with tending the fields, her hands rough from labor, and her heart heavy with the weight of her children's future. The harvest that year had been poor, and with debts mounting, Meenakshi found herself in a desperate situation. To make matters worse, her daughter Lakshmi was of marriageable age, and the thought of arranging her wedding seemed impossible amidst the financial strain. Meenakshi had always been proud of her self-reliance, but she now faced a crossroads. She needed help, and there was only one option left, her distant relative Chinnatha, a wealthy woman living in a nearby town. Stories had always circulated about Chinnatha's generosity, her grand house filled with riches, and how no one left her home empty-handed. With this hope in mind, Meenakshi decided she would visit Chinnatha and ask for help. Before dawn broke, Meenakshi set out on the long walk to the town. She had no money for the bus, so she walked on foot, her body aching with every step. Along the way, she passed familiar faces in the village, some offering smiles, others sympathy, as though they could sense her desperation. As she neared Chinnatha's grand house, her heart raced with a mixture of anxiety and hope. Little did she know, this journey would be more than a test of her endurance, it would be a lesson in life's harsh realities. Chinnatha's house was as magnificent as the rumors had suggested. The tall gates, the polished floors, and the intricate tapestries adorning the walls made Meenakshi feel like she had entered another world. Chinnatha greeted her warmly, with a smile that seemed to ease Meenakshi's worries for a moment. She was ushered inside, and after a brief exchange of pleasantries, Meenakshi explained her situation. With trembling hands, she told Chinnatha about the failed harvest, the rising debts, and the looming concern of her daughter's future. Her voice quivered as she laid bare her fears, hoping that her relative would understand the gravity of her situation and offer the help she so desperately needed. Chinnatha listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When Meenakshi finished, there was a long, uncomfortable silence. Then, Chinnatha spoke, her voice soft but firm. Meenakshi, I understand your struggles, but times are tough for everyone. I can't give you money, but I can offer something that might help you in some way. Meenakshi's heart sank, but she remained hopeful. Chinnatha left the room briefly, returning with an object wrapped in her hands. Meenakshi's eyes widened in anticipation, only for her hopes to be shattered when she saw what it was, an old, worn-out ichampai, palm leaf mat. Chinnatha handed it to her with a smile, as if it were the most valuable gift in the world. Meenakshi stood there, staring at the mat in disbelief. She had walked for hours, poured her heart out, and in return, she received an old mat, a symbol of how little Chinnatha understood her struggles. It wasn't money, nor food, nor any real solution to her problems. Yet, Meenakshi couldn't bring herself to say anything. She thanked Chinnatha politely, holding back tears, and left the grand house, the mat tucked under her arm. The walk back to the village felt longer than before, with each step heavy with disappointment. The weight of the mat felt like a burden far greater than it was, not because of its physical presence but because of the emotional toll it took on her spirit. The proverb echoed in her mind. She went to her aunt's house saying she didn't have a sari, but returned wearing a palm leaf garment. Meenakshi had always known the proverb, but now she fully understood its meaning. She had gone to seek help in her time of need, only to return with nothing substantial, just a makeshift solution that did little to change her situation. Her heart ached with the weight of that realization as she neared her home. Back at home, Meenakshi laid the ichampai mat on the floor, her children gathering around her with curious looks. They asked her what had happened, but Meenakshi couldn't bring herself to explain. How could she tell them that after all her hopes, she had returned with nothing but a mat? The weight of her disappointment pressed down on her, but she knew that feeling sorry for herself wouldn't change her situation. The days that followed were filled with hardship. Meenakshi tried to sell small items from her home to buy food, but it wasn't enough. Her debts grew larger, and her worries deeper. Every time she looked at the mat, a wave of anger and regret washed over her. It symbolized more than just Chinnatha's refusal to help, it was a reminder of the world's indifference to her suffering. But Meenakshi was not one to give up easily. Though the world had failed her, she refused to fail her children. She began to look for other ways to make ends meet, taking on extra work in the fields, sewing clothes for neighbors, and even weaving baskets from the palm leaves around her village. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep her family going. In time, Meenakshi's efforts began to pay off. The small income she earned from her extra work was enough to keep her family afloat, and though they still lived humbly, they no longer went hungry. The old champai mat, once a symbol of her failure, became something else entirely, a reminder of her resilience. Meenakshi realized that while she had returned from Chinnatha's house with nothing of value, she had gained something far more important, the realization that her strength lay not in others but in herself. She had survived, not because of Chinnatha's wealth or charity, but because of her own determination and resourcefulness. The proverb lived on in the village, but to Meenakshi, it no longer represented defeat. It was a reminder that while the world may not always offer help when it's needed, the ability to overcome hardships lies within one's own spirit. And with that lesson firmly planted in her heart, Meenakshi moved forward, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, she had the strength to face them.